This video contains 10 minutes of TiNe footage with 1-minute segments per sample.
It was really my first real, what I consider to be my first real job, at least on a movie. And it was the lead of the movie, so it was, you know, I actually had something to really work with, and it was a really beautiful, fun experience. And it had been quite frustrating up until that point, and then after that, you know, I started to work a little bit more steadily.
Did how you work change from having that experience, having a lead and having that kind of responsibility?
What do you mean, how I work?
Well, do you have a method? Do you...
I think maybe also I carry myself in a way that doesn't draw attention to myself. I'm good at sort of being invisible. No. I like to be with, you know, it's not that I like to go out and I like to hang out with friends, but I don't like being in loud, crowded spaces. It's very overwhelming to me.
Grow started as kind of a little side project for Mary Kate and I, and it started with a t-shirt, and it was the concept of a very well-draped t-shirt with the best fabric that you could wear back to your other kind of designer brands. And we really felt at the time there was really no other brand that was going after sort of the core wearable part of a wardrobe, which was mainly filled with designer. Whether it's the perfect t-shirt or the perfect pant or the perfect jacket, as far as being really modern and forward with techniques and fabrics and silhouettes, I think there's a lot of brands that you can recognize when you look at the product what it is. And I think the fact that it's understated.
It's not a trend.
It's not a trend-based brand. First editorial thing we ever saw, which was amazing. That was pretty beyond. That was very cool.
Yeah, I mean, there were elements of polarization a lot of times. When I first used to write, it would be the parts of myself that I felt weren't allowed. You know, like when I was younger, I wasn't allowed to be angry or allowed to be emotional or allowed to be confused or whatever it was, and certainly I wasn't allowing myself to be. But in my art, there was so much room for me to be anything. So a lot of what I had been hiding or had been hiding in my subconscious would come out of my songs. So there were these two sort of different identities. And as I get older, they're merging together, and there's so much more integration now.
Why is that, though?
Because I want to be more integrated. You know, it's basically something that I'm really consciously trying to do, and not cut off parts of myself and just be one-dimensionalized, you know, as an artist, or as a person for that matter. Well, spending more time with men who prove my superiority issues wrong, and I do that a lot lately.
To be able to appreciate them?
Heavily overlapping in the Venn diagram. I think it's, you know, something that we would call charisma. And I just don't think that people are born with this. Charisma seems to be more about, you know, sort of the intoxicating quality that you have on other people, as opposed to presence, which is more about, it has actually, and they weren't focused on whether or not they got the job or the good negotiation outcome or the venture capital money or what. They weren't talking about the concrete outcome. They were talking about how they felt when they left the situation. And the theme was regret or satisfaction. That was what people cared about. They cared, did I represent myself fully? Did I show them who I really am? Did I feel seen and understood? And so that was today was that kind of situation where I knew.
Vipassana isn't about completely suppressing or untangling and dismissing thought, you know, becoming empty. It's about kind of detaching and being in a third person perspective, like you are the being, and everything that goes on inside and outside of you is just happening as it happens, and you don't think about it in like, you know, what it means, and if it's a thought, you don't like let yourself get caught in the forward, you know, avalanching of the thought. So it's really cool. It's a really wonderful way to get to know yourself, I think. You know, if you're meditating and you know, you're just letting the thoughts come and letting the feelings come. It's like any sensation, like if you have an itch or if it's too hot or too cold, if you just pay attention to it, it's really.
We are compelled and we are moved by themes that, you know, run deep roots into our human nature. So, you know, blockbuster hits and you know, successes usually tap into that well, right? So, you know, that's why I think that beauty isn't something that's arbitrary, right? I mean, our culture isn't something that is fabricated, you know, as the postmodernists would want you to believe, you know, with no grounding in anything but, you know, a relative, culturally independent structures. I think that beneath all cultures, aesthetic has a certain form that, you know, you can trace to a common root, and that common root is, you know, has those themes that I think Carl Jung was the best at articulating, at least in his era, and which is continually being articulated.
But in reality, that's actually not true. I realized thinking about it recently, because I found out that the Community Media Center of the North Bay is actually probably going to get shut down if things continue as they've been going. And you know, the more I think about my learning experience, the more I realize actually I didn't go to film school, but I learned a crap load from this Community Media Center, where I went to classes, volunteered for different TV shows, got a lot of hands-on mentorship from the staff, you know, drove them crazy, you know, pushing the envelope of what was allowed and what wasn't allowed in the environment. But you know, the fact is that most of what I know how to do links back to knowledge I learned there. So without this,
and there's just this huge mix of people, and there's all these different things going on, and everybody just creates their own realm within that space, that swirling space of all these seemingly chaotic things. People find these ways of organizing their lives. Is that there's a time traveler staying with my great-grandfather in 1901, and he disappeared, and so what happened was I inherited these machines through my great-grandfather, and I'm finding these machines, and they're starting to work now, and their textures and surfaces, a really smooth surface typically, and then a lot of times the frames will be a rough surface. What's reality and what's paint. Ivy Lab is a recording studio in Chicago that goes around the whole room, and then at the end it culminates in these two exchanges of some type of alien intelligence, machinery coming in, and then that futuristic machinery juxtaposed.
Advice to students about, you know, like you're saying about finding your own style. It takes a long time. There's like a student phase of your life, and that for me was, you know, age 4 to age 26, where I was just soaking up everything I could, and try to keep an open mind. Like you want to like really focus on your one instrument for a period of time. Really woodshed. Years old, and my dad. Because before that, they don't give a 4-year-old an actual violin, so I had a Cracker Jack box with a ruler taped to it, and you just learn to respect your teacher and play games and stuff. And when I finally got a real to me about responsibility before I got my hands on it, because he did, you know, pay some money for it and didn't want to see me just promptly break it in two. So, but I remember that distinctly, being like 4 or 5 years old and like jumping up for the violin.
But it makes that soil fertile. Once you get that soil fertile, we balance the soil so we've got the right things in there. Now we've got the biochar properly inoculated in that soil, and we get better growth and healthier food, and we get soil that is pretty much permanently fertile. Now, we have a nitrogen cycle where the nitrogen is constantly going back into the air, so we do have to pay attention to that. But we can do that. We can get the nitrogen the plants need organically by, well, for several different methods, but one would be the plants that actually grow and put nitrogen back into the ground. Also, these things growing in the ground